Richard Montanez's story of how he ascended from janitor to becoming the first Mexican American to be promoted to an executive role at PepsiCo has been hailed as the ultimate rags to riches tale and the embodiment of the American dream. His story has inspired 2 memoirs and a Hollywood biopic that premiered in March 2023. Richard's entire career hinged on the claim that he had invented Flamin Hot Cheetos. He became a motivational speaker, charging up to $50,000 per appearance, met US presidents, served on several boards, guest lectured at universities. Only problem? The story might be a lie. So here's how Richard's version of the story goes. Richard Montanez grew up in a migrant labor camp east of Los Angeles in the 1960s. He and his family of 14 lived in a one-room cinder block house and worked long days picking grapes for the wine industry. When Richard started school at age 7, he didn't speak English and was one of the few Mexican kids at a predominantly white school. Though California schools were technically desegregated, Mexican students still rode a separate bus from the white students. When he asked his mother to pack him a sandwich for lunch instead of a burrito so he could fit in better, she refused and told him to embrace his culture. The next day, she sent him to school with 2 burritos so he could share one with a friend. The day after that, he sold his spare burrito for 25 cents, an early sign of his entrepreneurial spirit. Even though he had discovered his talent for hustling, Richard didn't like school and dropped out sometime between 4th and 6th grade. Accounts vary. He worked a series of odd jobs, including at a slaughterhouse and a car wash. He joined a gang, but turned things around after a few run-ins with the law. At 13, he met Judy, a neighborhood girl who would later become his wife. They're still married. In his memoirs and interviews, Richard talks at length about overcoming his anxieties about being different, and how, even though he left school early, he credits his parents and grandparents for instilling a strong work ethic and teaching him valuable life lessons.
Look, I have a PhD. I've been poor, hungry, and determined.
In 1976, 18-year-old Richard applied for a janitor job at the Frito-Lay factory in Rancho Cucamonga. Unable to read or write well, Richard had Judy help him fill out the application. He was hired on the spot. The job paid $4 an hour with benefits, which was a big step up for the family at the time. He took pride in his work, even if it was just mopping the floors. Between shifts, he immersed himself in learning everything he could about his workplace, studying the machines, spending time in the warehouse, even pitching in with inventory and waste reduction. His dedication stood out. Other employees liked him, and he was noticed as a conscientious worker. In 1991, PepsiCo, Frito-Lay's parent company, got a new CEO, Roger Enrico. He launched an internal morale-boosting campaign called Act Like an Owner. Most employees ignored it, brushing it off as a corporate cliche. But Richard didn't. He took it to heart and was inspired and empowered. After 13 years on the job, Richard decided he wanted to learn even more about his company and its products. Off the clock, he asked to tag along with a salesman, helping load and stock trucks. While stocking shelves in stores around LA, he observed the various flavors of Lay's, Ruffles, Fritos, and Cheetos chips on offer and noticed something.
I saw no products that were catering to Latinos or to the person who loves spices. It's all pretty much, salt and maybe barbecue flavored. No one was selling, spicy flavored or anything hot. So I'm like, that was it.
A few weeks later, while eating elote, grilled corn slathered in butter, cheese, lime, and chili powder, with his kids at a street cart, he had his big light bulb moment. The shape of the corn cob reminded him of Cheetos. Why not put spicy seasoning on them? He rushed home to share his idea with Judy, and she helped him make a concoction of chili powder and other spices. At the factory, Richard grabbed a bag of plain unseasoned Cheetos from a batch that had come out of a malfunctioning machine. He took the plain Cheetos home, sprayed them with oil, then tossed them through his homemade seasoning powder. Richard shared his spicy Cheetos with his family and friends, and everyone loved them. Inspired by Enrico's Act Like an Owner campaign, Richard looked up the CEO's number in the company directory and phoned. Enrico's assistant, Patty Roof, answered and eventually put him through. Richard explained how he had heeded Enrico's call to action, how he came up with his idea and created samples in his own kitchen at home. Enrico was impressed by the ingenuity and told Richard he was scheduled to visit the plant in 2 weeks and wanted to hear a formal presentation. Richard later reflected that he had been naive to call the CEO, but in his second memoir, he wrote that it was an executive named Al Carey who had encouraged him to make the call. At this point, Richard still struggled with reading and writing and had no idea how to create a business proposal, so he and Judy went to the library and studied books on marketing strategies. At home, their kids helped fill 100 clear plastic baggies with their homemade spicy Cheetos. They sealed them shut with an iron and hand drew a devil and a guy in a sombrero on each package. He bought a tie from Goodwill for $3. He walked into the boardroom carrying his samples of red Cheetos to hand out to the highest powered executives at Frito-Lay. He was shaking and sweating with nerves, and at one point felt like he was going to pass out. But he pitched his product and explained there was an untapped market of consumers who craved spicy snacks. The execs were impressed with Richard's insights into the Hispanic consumer. And so, the Flamin Hot Cheeto was born. Richard didn't get promoted or transferred to the R&D department at that point. Frito-Lay's food scientists took over to officially develop the product. 6 months later, Flamin Hot Cheetos were soft launched in small Latino markets in East LA. In 1992, they launched nationally and has since become a cultural phenomenon.
The uproar over Flamin Hot Cheetos, now banned actually in many schools around the country.
Last month, rapper Lil Xan claimed in an Instagram post that he was hospitalized for eating too many hot Cheetos.
In 1998, Richard was promoted to Quality Control Tech Services Specialist. Then over the next 30+ years, rose through the corporate ranks and eventually became the Vice President of Multicultural Sales for PepsiCo America, the parent company of Frito-Lay. In 2007, Richard began publicly taking credit for inventing Flamin Hot Cheetos, sharing the story in speeches at local businesses and philanthropy award ceremonies. The story got picked up by major media outlets, then went viral across online platforms as feel-good fodder. He launched a new career as a motivational speaker, sharing his personal and business philosophies, wrote 2 memoirs chronicling his rise from janitor to VP, and received multiple awards and accolades from PepsiCo and community groups. In March 2023, a movie based on Richard's life was released. He currently has over 100,000 followers on Instagram and 460,000 on TikTok. When NPR contacted Frito-Lay to verify Richard's story, the company responded that documentation from the 80s and 90s was limited, and as a result, there was no formal record of how Flamin' Hot Cheetos were created. The institutional memory had faded over time. Former PepsiCo CEO Roger Enrico passed away in 2016, but former Frito-Lay CEO Al Carey not only supported Richard's claims, but also made public appearances with him. Former company execs Indra Nooy and Tom Greco both contributed blurbs to Richard's books. Frito-Lay's chief marketing officer Jennifer Sands said the company had helped movie producers piece together historical details. For over a decade, the company supported Richard's version of events, letting him spread his story unchecked and never publicly corrected the record. In mid-2018, 60-something-year-old Lynn Greenfeld happened across an article about Richard Montanez and was shocked to see him taking credit for inventing the Flamin' Hot Cheeto, because in 1989, she had helped create the Flamin' Hot Cheeto. Lynn got in touch with her former employer Frito-Lay to straighten things out, which triggered an internal company investigation as well as an investigation by the Los Angeles Times. In May 2021, journalist Sam Dean published an expose revealing the real origin story behind everyone's favorite addictive spicy snack. In 1989, Fred Lindsay, a Frito-Lay executive and former Southside Chicago salesman, pushed for a new spicy product after noticing the popularity of regional competitors in corner stores and gas stations. He passed the project to product manager Sharon Owens, who then assigned Lynn Greenfeld, who was fresh out of business school, to lead research and development. Lynn and her team traveled around Chicago, Detroit, and Houston, buying up dozens of unfamiliar chip brands and visiting small stores to get an understanding of what consumers craved. She came up with the brand name Flamin' Hot and worked with packaging and flavor development teams to finalize the product and branding. In August 1990, Frito-Lay trademarked Flamin Hot and debuted Fritos, Cheetos, and Lays in the new flavor in select stores in Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, and Houston. Flamin Hot Cheetos and Lays went national in early 1992. So where does Richard Montanez fit into all this? The LA Times spoke with 20 former employees involved in new product development at Frito-Lay in the 1980s and 1990s. None of them recalled anything resembling the story Richard had repeated over the last nearly 20 years. 6 of them were able to corroborate Lynn Greenfeld's account, recalling that inspiration from Flaming Hots came from the corner shops of Chicago and Detroit. On top of that, Roger Enrico, the CEO who Richard had supposedly pitched to, wasn't even at Frito-Lay when Flaming Hot products were developed. He took over as CEO 6 months after Flaming Hots were already in the test market. Richard often said that the initial pitch meeting in the boardroom was in 1990, but Enrico's assistant remembered taking Richard's phone call in 1992 or 1993, after Flaming Hot products were already in stores around the country. The LA Times dug up a December 1993 US News and World Report article about businesses empowering their employees. In a section about Frito-Lay's Rancho Cucamonga plant, Richard was mentioned. Veteran machine operator Richard Montanez developed a new ethnic food concept aimed at the Hispanic market. After testing recipes and outlining a marketing strategy, Montanez burst forth with the kernel of an idea, Flamin Hot Popcorn, which will soon make its debut. In March 1994, Flamin Hot Popcorn did in fact hit the shelves, but this was 4 years after Flamin Hot Cheetos had already launched. Richard went on to help develop new snacks aimed at Latino consumers in the Los Angeles market, including a product called Sabrositas, but not Flamin Hot Cheetos. He retired in March 2019 during the internal investigation into his story. Lynn Greenfeld told the LA Times, "It is disappointing that 20 years later, someone who played no role in this project would begin to claim our experiences as his own, then personally profit from them." Frito-Lay did not dispute any of the LA Times reporting. This is what they said in their statement. "None of our records show that Richard was involved in any capacity in the Flamin Hot test market. That doesn't mean we don't celebrate Richard, but the facts do not support the urban legend." Ouch. After over a decade of supporting Richard, championing him, making him a brand ambassador, co-signing his underdog story, Frito-Lay did a complete 180. The company added more detail. According to our records, McCormick, Frito-Lay's longtime seasoning supplier, developed the Flaming Hot seasoning and sent initial samples to Frito-Lay on December 15, 1989. This is essentially the same seasoning Frito-Lay uses today. When former CEO Al Carey was asked to explain the conflicting news clippings and employee accounts, he stated, "This is such a long time ago. I bet there was a spicy Cheeto in the Chicago, LA, maybe Houston market too." NPR reporter Sarah Gonzalez also investigated Richard's claims and also concluded that Flaming Hot Cheetos were on the market in the Midwest of the US before Richard had ever pitched his version of a spicy Cheeto. But it was confirmed that he was involved in pitching a similar chip in California around the same time. PepsiCo, Frito-Lay's parent company, then released a statement doing another backflip to seemingly repair the relationship with Richard. The sincere truth is, at PepsiCo, we believe in the strength and power of teams, and we attribute the launch and success of Flaming Hot Cheetos and other products to several people who worked at PepsiCo, including Richard Montanez. Far from being an urban legend, Richard had a remarkable 40-plus year career at PepsiCo. His insights and ideas on how to better serve Hispanic consumers were invaluable and directly resulted in the success of Flaming Hot Cheetos. To be clear, we have no reason to doubt the stories he shares about taking the initiative to create new product ideas for the Cheetos brand and pitching them to past PepsiCo leaders. The company was essentially saying that it was possible that Flamin' Hot Cheetos were being developed simultaneously, but separately by different teams, since the West and Midwest division of Frito-Lay operated independently at the time. Richard has maintained his claims that he was behind the genesis of Flamin' Hot Cheetos, but acknowledged that Frito-Lay's statement about McCormick developing the seasoning in December 1989 makes sense based on the timeline he remembers. As for the discrepancies between his and Frito-Lay's accounts, he believes that the lack of documentation was due to his low-level position in the company. The producers of Richard's movie were informed of the results of Frito-Lay's internal investigation in 2019, but decided to move forward with the project anyway. In July 2024, Richard filed a lawsuit against Frito-Lay, accusing the company of denying his role in creating Flamin Hot Cheetos and of launching a smear campaign against him. The lawsuit alleges fraud, racial discrimination, defamation, and violations of California's unfair competition law. Richard called the LA Times article defamatory and claimed that Frito-Lay's comments caused serious damage to his motivational speaking career, including the loss of numerous partnerships and a significant drop in bookings. As of 2025, he continues to insist that he invented Flamin Hot Cheetos. All that being said, Richard's success shouldn't be completely dismissed. He still went from a janitor who couldn't read or write to becoming a PepsiCo VP, an impressive feat by any measure. I guess he just felt the story needed a stronger hook, like being the inventor of one of the most iconic snacks of all time. Richard has also remained committed to giving back to his community through his foundation One Light. He and his family have distributed thousands of boxes of groceries, school supplies, and shoes to families in need. Let me know what you think in the comments. Is it all just a harmless exaggeration to make an inspiring story just a little bit more spicy? Or do you think Richard is a scammer? As always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.